working over the course of the whole semester. Small group and interpersonal stuff. They just took their final exam, actually, their third exam for the content last week.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
you guys, once we get back, there's just a couple of weeks, and we're going to be right into like working on workshopping our group presentations. And so we'll spend a lot of time working on those in class. As far as what's expected, you're going to get to do your outlines in class. You get to work on rehearsing these and practicing these in class. And then when we get back to Christmas break, that's when you guys will be presenting them. Okay, so it's kind of how the rest of the semester is going to roll out. But today you're going to learn about communication and new media. Who are we missing? Let's see. Anybody who's missing, have we heard from them? Do we know, are they planning on being here? I know more than the funeral. Yeah, I did know that one. Well, I appreciate y'all being here because I'll miss you over the break. Okay. How are we open? Oh, okay.
I did an Olympiad.
You're welcome. Okay, this isn't anywhere near as bright as it should be. So
That's okay. There's not a lot of info on this one.
I would say grab your notes out. It's a really neat thing to be able to learn about communication and media. It's something I didn't learn about till graduate school. So enjoy. And please be respectful and give your attention to Mrs. Morse. And it's set up, so I just slotted it in. So have fun.
Great. I like the setup. So first, I just want to say thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. She told you I'm Mrs. Morse. By day, I work at a company called Northrop Grumman, which is a defense contractor, and I work there as a communications specialist. By night, I am a newly elected city council member for West Haven City, but I'm also a grad student, as she mentioned. I'm in the master's program at Weber State University, where I'm learning professional communications, and I'm so excited to teach this specific class because I took 2110, or small group and interpersonal communication, as an undergrad several years ago, and it was the class that kind of steered me towards a career in communications. So I'm really excited to be here. First, I want to start out by asking you all a question. How many of you know who's running for president in 2020? Give me some names. Yes. Who's running? Give me a name. Say that again. Biden's running. Anybody else? Yes.
Andrew Yang.
Say that again.
Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang is running. Anyone else? Say that again. Warren's running. Harris. Anybody else know some of the names? I see
Mayor
you two
Pete.
are pretty.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Buttigieg's running. Our current president, is he running? Yes. How do you know that these people are running for president? Where did you get this information? News. You got it from the news? Where else did you get it? Twitter. That's a great place to get it. Where else? Anywhere else? Say that again. Class. You learned it in class. How many of you learned this information through other forms of social media? Maybe you saw videos. Maybe you saw videos of campaign rallies. How many of you saw stuff on digital media? Yeah? A few of you? So that's why I'm here today. I'm here to talk to you about how we communicate with the use of new media. So first, let's talk about old versus new. Old media, the oldest form I can think of, is hieroglyphics and scribe. It dates way back to ancient times, right? That's the way we communicated many, many years ago. That's the way we delivered messages. Then with the invention of the printing press, which I'm sure all of you have already learned about, right? we moved over to print. So we got books, we got magazines, we got newspapers through print, and then we kind of moved on or evolved into broadcast. We went to radio. Families used to sit around the radio at home and listen to programs or listen to the news on the radio. And then we moved over to TV. And with TV, we get our entertainment, we get our news, we get our sports, we get almost anything from TV, right? That's all old forms of media. We're now moving into this new form of media, which I think most of you are probably very familiar with. I think most of you probably, I would even say you're experts in it, because this is how you grew up. You grew up with new media. New media is the internet, it's social media. How many of you have a social media page? Some form of social media? But most of us do, right? It's also blogs, it's podcasts, it's videos. These are new forms of media that we're using. Now, can you tell me what the difference is between old versus new? Go ahead.
The newer is a faster outlet to get information basically.
Absolutely. What else?
Probably the same thing, that the reason why there's newer media is because it's more efficient to get like the word around. So.
It's very efficient, isn't it? Can you find any other differences between old versus new? I'll tell you a few of them. So, old media used to come from one place. It used to come from one central location. It was, top editors in the country who ran the top national news stations would compile information, then they would send it out and distribute it, and that's the news that we got, right? Now it's more decentralized. We have many people pulling together a lot of information and sending it to many people. So it's really, there's just a lot of information out there, and anybody can send it, right? It's also, you guys have heard of the one-way communication model and the two-way, right? Have you guys discussed that?
Think back to transmission model of communication. Remember, it's like back old school radio style. We look at those metaphors of communication, and it's just like one source,
Yep.
and then they send out the information.
Right.
So that's what she's talking about. So I'm just drawing you back into the metaphors that we talked about.
Right. It's also this old communication, these old communication outlets, they're a one-way communication model. So it's people sending information to people, but nothing coming back, right? With the new media, we get to talk back to it, right? We get to interact with the with whatever information we're getting, right? It's also more democratizing. And the reason I say that is because I asked you guys a few minutes ago, I asked you who was running for president, and many of you knew. When I was your age, I didn't know. I would have no idea who was running for president because I didn't have this stuff coming across my news feed every single day on my social media pages. And so we actually get to see a lot more of what's going on in the world. If you think back to, and I realize, 2 years ago you guys were a lot younger, but 2 years ago, Bernie Sanders ran a campaign where he took full advantage of new media. And he campaigned on new media. And because he used new media, he was able to capture 20 and 30-something-year-olds and deliver a message to them. And that's why he did so well. If he would have done that with old media, he wouldn't have gotten to the 20 and 30-something-year-olds who are using new media every single day, right? Now, another way that this is different is that it helps us to retain our individuality. And the reason I say that is because 40, 50 years ago, we all grew up in these little families, and we had the same values and beliefs that our parents had, and they had the same values and beliefs that their parents had, right? We grew up in these bubbles, and that's all we knew. Now, we get to see outside the bubble. We get to see what everybody else believes, and all the values of everybody else, and we get to see what we're like and what we like, and we get to decide who we are, right? And so those are some of the differences between old media and new media. And when I was preparing this lesson, I came across this quote by Stephen Kinzer, who is a New York Times bestselling author. And he said, "New media and mobile entertainment are revolutionizing the way people learn about the world." What do you guys think about that? Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? Why do you think it's revolutionizing the way we learn about the world? It's easier to see different cultures, right? So we're learning about that. What else? How else are we revolutionizing the way we learn? Yes?
Then you get to see like a lot of different opinions. Like if you were just to read an article, you'd just see like that one person's opinion.
Yeah.
As you can see, like one person saying something and then another person like commenting on that.
Yeah.
Something else.
Yeah, you get to learn a little bit, get to hear different sides, right? I think that Stephen Kinzer nailed it. I think we are revolutionizing the way that people learn about the world. And I think we're doing that for several reasons, and it's the characteristics of new media that helps us do that. And one is that we can create it. And by that I mean we are the editors, we are the photojournalists, we are the photographers, the videographers, we're the artists, we're the singers. But we create the media that we see. We have full capability to do that, right? It's also very interactive, so we get to talk back and forth. Again, this is that two-way communication model that I just discussed. So it's very interactive. There are actually companies who spend millions of dollars every year to track and measure interactivity or engagement on social media pages, on websites. They want to know what you're talking about. They want to know what you like, what you don't like. It's personalized, and this part kind of made me laugh when I was putting this together because I put this together over the weekend, and at the same time, of course, I was scrolling through social media throughout the day, and I came across this meme, and probably not as funny to you guys because you're a lot younger than I am, but I came across this meme that said something about 14-year-olds learning to code, HTML code, because of MySpace. And MySpace is a social media platform that was a big deal a long time ago, right? I had a MySpace page, and it's true. We learned to code at a young age because we wanted to personalize our page. I can't say I can't code anymore because we've moved on to better things that didn't require that. But nowadays, you don't have to learn how to code to personalize something. If you want to create a website, there are tools, tons of tools out there to help you create a website without having to code it. There's also a lot of really user-friendly sites that you can use to create your website. It's creative, and this is really a part that I thought was well, it was really true because you get to create whatever you want, anything you want. You can create a website, you can post your videos, you can post your artwork. SoundCloud, you can record songs and post songs. It is so creative, you can do anything you want because of new media. This is not something that we could do 20 or 30 years ago. We couldn't even do this 10 years ago. It's also really flexible. When I was a kid, on Fridays there was this programming called TGI Fridays. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but it was 4 sitcoms. They started at 7 p.m. They got over at 9 p.m. and you had to be home to watch it, and everybody I knew watched it, right? If you went to dinner, you didn't get to see it. Well, nowadays, it's really flexible. You don't have to be home at 7 p.m. to watch your show. I mean, Hulu will run your show any time of day. You get to decide when you're going to watch something or when you're going to listen to something. You get to decide when you're looking at social media, when you're going to see something on social media, right? It's all there. It's all very flexible. So communication is always evolving, and that's, I think, a very important part of new media is that it's always evolving. Now this is why it's evolving. New media by the numbers. Facebook has 2.5 billion users. That's a lot of people. There are almost 2 billion websites. There's 600 million blogs. There's 1.9 billion YouTube users. There's 330 million Twitter and Reddit users. And then there's also 190 million Snapchat users. And this is only a few of the social media sites or apps that we have access to. There's so many more. So this is why they're always evolving. They want to keep up with this. Companies want to keep up with this. In fact, companies will spend millions of dollars in technology to try and find or be a part of the next big media thing. Because all of us are online. All of us are in this new media. So like I said, communication it's evolving. It's evolving in the way that we even talk to each other. You know, when I was a teenager, I begged my parents for a phone in my bedroom. That was like a big deal. And I had to get really good grades, and I had to be really good to get it. And I finally got the phone, and the reason I wanted the phone was because I wanted to sit in my bedroom and talk to my friends for hours. How many of you want to talk to your friends on the phone for hours? Anybody?
Nobody talks on the
No?
phone.
When someone calls you, are you thinking, why are you calling me? If you can text me, right? Nobody wants a phone call. Even I don't want phone calls, and I grew up in that era, right? We want text messages. We are evolving in the way that we communicate with one another. We no longer want to talk to each other on the phone. We want to use some sort of computer assistance to get the message across or text each other or whatever it is. We don't want to call each other.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How does that play into the fact that, I mean, I remember like memorizing every single one of my best friend's phone numbers.
Oh, yeah.
And we would call people, and we just sit there and like sit around in a circle and call people, like in
Oh,
high
yeah.
school and stuff like that. And we would call everybody we knew, and we would just memorize it all because we didn't have like our little books to keep numbers, and we didn't have a phone to like store that stuff in. What does communication and new media say about like the actual reprogramming of the way that we think about the information that we used to have to like have, the data we used to have in order to be able to communicate with others? Doesn't say anything about that. Yeah.
I don't think it does say anything about that, because why would it? I mean, all of that information is in the palm of our hand. It's always there. But you're right, we had to memorize. I still know the phone number from when I was a kid. And it was only 7 digits back then. Now you have 10 digits, right? You have to dial at least 10 to call somebody. We had 7 digits, and we memorized every single phone number. And we used them every single day because that's how we communicated with people. So it's always evolving, right? And because it's always evolving, and we're moving over into this more digital world, then we have an online identity now. We don't have just our own identity. We have an online identity, who we are on the computer or using this technology. Computer-mediated communication, or CMC, is human communication that is facilitated by a wide range of new media. So it's how we talk to each other using that technology that's available to us. And we determine who we are online. We get to decide if we're our true selves or if we're somebody else. How many of you have heard of catfishing? I'm sure all of you have heard of catfishing, right? There's like a whole show about catfishing. It's people who lie about who they are to gain something from somebody else, right? And we can do that online if we want, or we can just be ourselves. What do you think the downside is to this computer-mediated communication? Or what's the downside to being able to communicate with people instead of face-to-face through use of this technology?
You get more comfortable with the person via like text message, and when you come like face to face, you have a hard time communicating for this phone.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely a downside, isn't it? Are there any others? Think of any other downsides to this?
You never know what could happen. Like, you don't know the person, you don't know anything about them really in your life.
Yeah, don't we feel kind of, we feel more comfortable talking to people that we don't even know, right? What else?
We talked about like nonverbals in this class, and I think that like you don't get like access to those, so you can't really tell like what they're feeling.
I think absolutely. That's one of, in fact, when I put this lesson together, that's one of the things I thought, make sure we talk about nonverbal. You're not getting those cues, right? What else?
It's easier to lie through a phone than in person.
Totally is, isn't it?
Like you can tell by like Yeah, I'm a millionaire. But then in person, they'll be actually homeless.
Yeah, it's really,
So accountability changes, maybe, is what you're getting at?
yeah, it's really easy to be somebody different, to not recognize the person on the end of this as another human being, right? We treat people differently. Maybe we're ruder to people online, or you see that all the time on Facebook where people are talking down to other people, and you think, gosh, they probably wouldn't do that to their face, right? And then also the catfishing is a huge issue, and there are lots of people who actually lose a lot of money in these catfishing scams. That's a huge downside to this. It's important to consider how you express yourself online, and the reason for that is because people are looking at your online identity. They want to know who you are. Employers are looking when you apply for a job. They want to see who you are online. My own employer checked out all of my social media pages before they hired me. They wanted to make sure that I'm a decent person, or I am who I say I am, right? Schools are doing that as well. A lot of colleges are doing that. They're looking at social media pages of students who apply for school. They want to make sure they're bringing in good quality people, right? It's important that you consider who you are when you're creating this online identity, and that you develop your online self to match accordingly, right? Screen names are a big one. There's screen names in every single platform. There's always a screen name. You always have to pick a screen name, right? A lot of people on their Facebook page, it's just their first and last name, but you go into other places like Twitter or dating sites or whatever, and it's going to be something different. Maybe on Twitter it's something that they care about, and maybe on a dating site it's something more flirty, whatever it is. So screen names are kind of a superficial way for people to look at who you are when they see it. Email addresses, kind of the same thing as screen names. A lot of people, again, pick their first and last name, and it doesn't really give you a whole lot of information, but some people might put something a little different that kind of gives you a little bit more information about them. Blogs, those actually give you a better chance to really kind of dive in deep and learn a little bit more about a person. Bloggers typically write about something they care about. They write about things that are personal to them. They write about things that they have a lot of knowledge on. And so by reading a person's blog, you can really start to understand who they are as a person. Now, personal profiles are another great way to understand how somebody is or who somebody is, looking into their online self. A lot of them are different. If you know, there's the LinkedIn profiles that are kind of more focused on education and career, and then dating profiles are going to be a little more personal and kind of give you a little more personal details about who that person is. Social media, though, I think is probably the biggest area that we develop our online self. That's where people can really see who you are. In fact, I read something recently that said you can tell more about a person scrolling through their Facebook page in a couple of minutes, or any of their social media in a couple of minutes, than you can meeting them for the first time for 5 minutes. You'll learn a lot about people on their social media because that's typically where they feel the most comfortable. That's where they act the way they are. Speaking of social media, there are a lot of commonalities with it, right? You can take pretty much any social media site and it's going to fit most of these. All of them have some sort of personal profile that you can add a little bit of information, whether it's just a little bio line or something a little more in depth. You have to select the screen name for all of them. CMC relationships, again, this is that computer-mediated communication. And by relationships, I mean all of these sites give us an opportunity to develop a relationship with somebody by liking their page, following their page, friending them. We get to develop these computer-mediated communication relationships with them. Participation in groups. This is another way that we get to develop a CMC relationship. We get to find a group of people who have a common interest and we join that group and we read the post and maybe we comment or we create our own posts, and we get to have some sort of relationship with people who we've never even met many times, right? Because we're all in this group and we all have a common interest. Direct messaging, pretty common on a lot of those mediums. Sharing user-generated content. Now this is a big one. Earlier we talked about videos being a new form of media or new media, right? So sharing user-generated content, we do that a lot because we share videos all the time. Videos go viral all the time, right? Because we're sharing it and someone else is creating it. Again, this goes back to the very beginning where I said we used to get information from one person and it was delivered to everybody, and now it's many people sharing many things, right? That's what we're seeing with a lot of these viral videos. That's what that is. It's many people sharing the viral videos. Expressing opinions. I don't think there's any shortage of opinions on social media. You can read anybody's opinion anytime, any day on anything, right? You can't remember what that one says.
Well, it says opinion, I don't know why.
Information. What was that? Sorry, I don't remember what that said.
I just wanted to shoot it.
Oh, finding information. Oh gosh, that's too easy. Yes.
I don't know why that's there.
We have an abundance of information at our fingertips all the time. All the time. You can look up anything. You can find anything on social media. Everything's there. Anything that anybody is talking about, you can search for it on social media and find that information. You can find news stories or whatever it is, or find the viral video that everybody's talking about. Sometimes there's a recipe I like to make, and I can't remember the name of it. And so sometimes I'll go onto Facebook, because that's where I saw it. I'll go onto Facebook and I'll put in the search bar a couple of the ingredients, and the recipe always pops up. For some reason I remember the ingredients, but I can't remember the name of the recipe. And then it's also great for entertainment. We spend hours every day even on social media, do we not? And I'm not knocking it, because I think that social media and these other forms of new media are the way that we communicate. Like I said earlier, I spent hours on the phone talking to friends all the time. I pass notes in class. I'm sure none of you do that. Is that a thing? Do people do that?
I certainly don't see it very much.
I don't-
We used to there were 100 different ways you can fold a note, and
yeah.
the more sophisticated you got at folding notes, I have boxes full of notes that I would get in class.
Oh yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I'm not
Old
knocking.
school technology. I'd love to see all pass notes. I wouldn't even stop y'all if you passed
It would be
notes.
interesting, wouldn't it? So I'm
Your
not
phone would
knocking
pass a
social
note.
media as the way that we get our entertainment or the way that we communicate with people, because
I know.
again, social media is the
As long as
way,
you're being
or this new
respectful.
media is the way that we communicate now. And so when people talk about screen time, I'm like, but that's what we do now, right? Self-disclosure is another big part of new media. People feel very comfortable disclosing things when they're behind a keyboard and a screen, right? You might say something, maybe you like somebody, and you might feel more comfortable telling them in a text or in a direct message or whatever than you would if you were face to face. So we're disclosing things, and we're choosing who we disclose things to. We might disclose one very personal thing to somebody else and choose something else to disclose to other people. And so self-disclosure has really started to come out in new media, and is making us feel comfortable saying things we normally don't want to say or disclose to people. It's also your community. This computer-mediated communication is now your community. When I was a kid, my community was the people that lived around me on the same street as me. It was the kids I went to school with. It was my family. It was the people that worked at the neighborhood stores. That was my community. Now your community has no bounds. Your community is huge. It's endless. It's across the world. It's anybody you want to talk to. Your community is the entire globe, essentially. Anybody that is connected to new media is your community. Any thoughts on that? That's interesting, right? Okay, now, I'm just gonna conclude this part. We're gonna do an activity here in a second. But my conclusion on this is that new media is the way that we're now communicating. We've evolved so much that all of our communication is being done through technology. We prefer to communicate that way. Companies are watching this. They're spending billions of dollars to understand how we communicate with each other. They're spending billions of dollars to see what we like and what we don't like. And they're spending a lot of money for them to communicate with us and for us to communicate back to them. Do you guys have any questions so far? No? Okay. So we're going to do an activity. I don't know how to turn that off. So I'll let you.
I can take care of that. Okay, everybody, before the activity, everybody stand up, make 2 laps around your tables. I know it's late, it's after lunch.
It's after lunch.
Thank you.
Why don't you tuck in your chair?
Way to make life hard on people, Brian.
They're supposed to jump over it. Point.
What's the other one?
Taylor, could you grab the lights on that side?
Okay, are you guys awake? I knew I was coming after lunch, so I knew that I was like, death by PowerPoint, great. Everybody loves that. Okay, so we're just gonna do a fun little activity. Hopefully this works out. I'm not a high school student, and I don't have high school students at home, and so it's sometimes hard for me to understand what you guys do and what you're into, right? I try to keep up, but I'm not cool anymore. So, okay, so I'm gonna have you take out your phones and don't clear any notifications because that's what we want. We want the notifications, right? You guys have notifications?
Do you want them to turn on like, do you want them to make noise?
Do I want them to make noise?
Yes. Because right now they're probably on silent.
No. I just don't want you to clear your notifications, okay? Because this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna have each table come up to this board, and I want you to put a hash mark by each, like, if you've got, we're gonna write like Facebook. That one works like that. Facebook. And I want you to write a hash mark for every Facebook notification you got, okay? Twitter, let's see, what else?
Are we writing it up there on a piece of paper?
You're gonna come up here one group at a time in just a second.
Sometimes people get email notifications. Just right.
Okay, and if I don't have it included up here, write it for me, okay?
Some of these red pens tend to be pretty good right now.
Let's do the red then.
This black
Well,
one's
only like emails since you got since we've been here, okay? How about that? You don't even have to include emails, it's fine. I get email I can look at my phone right now if I got
Well, you
5
guys could write the number of emails, like don't hash mark it, just like write a number.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
that
you know
might be
what?
cool to say.
Write the number of emails you have.
I have like 10,000 emails I haven't touched.
Text
so.
messages, there's another one, let's write that.
Wait, I have a question. She's so interesting.
Emails and this
Just since you got here. I just wanna see how much communication has come to you since we've been here. Okay, so let's start with this table. You guys come up, grab a marker, write a hash mark for each one.
Yes.
Add to it if it's not already up there, because I'm sure that I don't know all the stuff. There you go.
Does that count? Right now.
Do hash marks.
Oh. I got off of Facebook here.
big number, right? I'm right. I'm sorry. Tell me a number.
If you have big numbers, write the number out. If not, then write down
Then
words.
she got it. That's fine. Then she got it. Then she got it in the class. Well, my emails are wrong. Nobody knows their email because
Yeah.
He knows.
Just send it to the group chat.
let's get this table to come up and do the same thing.
Oh, it is the. That, so look. So here.
Oh, you don't? What do you do?
So.
There you go. That's fine.
That's where the same building. So right here
Okay, let's have this table right here go up. And if it's not on there, and you got a notification for it, write it next to the
Send the address, send the address, and then send the time that was going to be there.
I'll send you the flyer.
Yeah, that blue marker's not awesome.
They show up. We're gonna be there. That's when.
Let's have this front middle table.
Okay.
I know you don't have it. And then let's have this table go up.
It's crazy all these notifications. It's
Crazy, isn't it?
Service in this building. So. The fact that you guys get
Finding a
I
way.
have zero service in this building. I just don't have service. Like I see house parking lot behind my car to have service. I get every day. I get like bombarded with text messages like, yeah, my house is service. I worry like when my kids are reaching out to me.
Do the reveal? Okay. Alright, let's have this front corner table go up.
Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. Down the art hole. This has like at the very end of the art hole or.
I feel like with fashion arts, aren't we supposed to like add on to it? Oh yeah, someone just tallies, yeah.
Sally Mark. Yeah.
That's the actual phrase, I think.
That is it, I think.
That's how I keep track of numbers. When I run out of fingers.
The only notification I have is that like it's not working. It's not sending.
Alright, why don't you guys go up there and add yours?
139 texts. Good lord. Oh,
It's because they don't spend hours talking to each other on the phone.
and welcome to my world. I have to keep them focused.
I know, after lunch.
I don't talk to people.
No, this class is great. They're a really good class.
Are they?
Yeah, they're really good. Super fun.
Well, I think that's a lot on YouTube because you make it fun.
Because I'm like, yeah.
Because there's sometimes.
No, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's a good choice. Right, I do. I talk loud. I'm kind
fast, you have to like think about it. Yeah.
Oh, all right, you guys telling me about my pedagogy, that's good. That's good feedback, for real. Appreciate it.
That's a lot,
It's
right?
interesting to see y'all.
I don't have a degree in math, that's a lot, right?
Like teaching this class at the
This
university.
is how much, not in math. This is how much you're receiving communication while you're sitting here in your learning environment, right? That's a lot of communication going on. And it's a wonder that you guys are able to learn and be productive in your classrooms when you have these phones just blasting this information to you all the time. Like, hey, look at me. Hey, somebody friended you. Hey, check it out. Look at this. Or somebody commented on your post and you want to open that up and you want to look at it, right? I do all the time, I know. This is a lot of distraction to people who are in the middle of learning. So I commend you for being able to learn while you're being distracted like that. We didn't have that as kids. We had the note passing, but I mean,
Teachers took a lot of notes away.
took a lot of notes. Some read them out loud. Embarrassing.
Yeah, that happened a lot, actually.
It did happen a lot. This is a lot, and this is an interesting activity just to kind of give us a perspective of how much you're being distracted by this communication that's happening from new media all the time. You probably wake up with even more notifications every morning, right? Or if you sleep with your phone next to you and you forget to turn it on silent, maybe it wakes you up at night, right? That's a lot going on, and some of you didn't even get service. So this isn't even the total number of what this classroom was distracted with today in the form of new media communication. It's crazy, isn't it?
And this is the only class I don't require you guys to have them put away all the time. I don't usually get on your cases too much. Like if you're on them ridiculously, like, come on guys, you're so brazen, put them away. You know, but I mean every other class, every single one of my English classes are required to have them put away, or in the cupboard they get extra point of extra credit every day to have them put away in the cupboard. So like they have to have them away. So this is the only class I haven't required that of.
And it makes sense why you would do that. Looking at this, it makes sense why you would ask your students to put it away, because how else are they going to pick up the information they need, right? So anyway, I wanted to run this activity just so we could see what you guys are faced with in just, 30, 40, 45 minutes of time. I wanted to see what kind of new media is trying to communicate with you in just this amount of time. So thanks for doing that. Do you guys have any questions? It's pretty much the wrap up there. Do you have any questions on anything that we discussed today?
May I ask a question of them about what you discussed
Oh,
today?
please do.
Yeah, so looking at that up there, so all of those different things, if you were to think about the one that you value the most. Like if you have all these notifications, which one would you go to first? That would be my first one. And I'm actually super interested to know which medium you guys would go to first, like out of this. So if you wouldn't mind, if you guys are embarrassed, put your heads down, like hands up type of a thing. But I don't think, it's nothing to be embarrassed about, but like raise your hands. I'm going to just say it, and I just want you to raise your hands if this is the one that you think is the most important, like the one that you would respond to first. And I don't think there's obviously no right or wrong answer here, but Facebook, Twitter, email, Instagram, Snapchat. All right. Okay. Text messages. Okay, so Snapchat beats text. Okay, TikTok. All right. There weren't that many for that. But, so that's interesting to me, because I'm with you, trying to stay up. I'm not on. The only thing I have on my phone out of all of these, I've got text messaging, email, and then I've got Instagram. But I have every single notification turned off. Like, so I have to purposely go into my stuff to go find it. So I don't let it interfere with my life unless I want it to. Like, that's the point, right? So you could, by the way, you can turn those things off. So if it does turn into something that's bothersome to you, Lydia.
I think personally it's also depending on the person who's texting you, or the notification
So the
you're
source.
getting.
Okay.
Because for me personally, if it was my mom texting me, she usually texts me on text messages. So obviously I would go to that first, but
Or
otherwise.
she'll call you.
Or it might be, if it's mom, that's the last one I'm gonna respond to, right?
No, mom is a first round.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Don't want to get her.
on behalf of mothers,
Answer it,
thank
right?
you. We
You'll have to
appreciate it.
talk to her on the phone. I think that's interesting that you all run the Snapchat first. I would have guessed text messages actually. I would have thought that was your first stop. But it's interesting to see where your communication is, where you prefer to communicate, or which technology you're using. So it's interesting.
What do you guys think? So, out of all these things, obviously you've got a lot going on with your devices with this new media. But what do you think is what are ways do you think that you can minimize some of these distractions for you? And I'm totally serious here because you guys, I know that you're like on the cusp of graduation, that you're getting to the point where you need to, be out into the world in different ways. But how can you kind of persevere here with all this stuff going on? Like, how do you stay focused? I'm super interested because I look at that, I get anxiety about the fact that I'm all over the place all the time. And so to feel like if I had anything that was constantly barraging me with information from others that I'm trying to maintain relationships with, and we've learned that it's hard to maintain any relationship, and so to maintain all the stuff that we're doing via this new media, that's exhausting. So I'm curious, as your teacher, as somebody who cares about you immensely, how do you kind of rein it in and focus in? It's instructive, yeah.
This is kind of bad, but I'll reply to certain people, but leave the other ones undelivered, so that means they've texted me, but it'll be 6 hours until I respond back to them, because it's so stressful to try and respond to everyone.
Okay. So strategically decide who it is. Okay.
I mean, you kind of just get used to it because we've always had.
You're
Yep.
digital natives, this is the way you operate.
So it's just kind of if this is a class that you really need to learn in, you just kind of.
You have to prioritize
Yeah, but then if it's math, that's how you just
if it's math, then all right, I gotcha, I feel you. So it takes more effort than in those other classes to do that work. Any other thoughts on that? Yeah, Lydia.
Honestly, for me, most of my friends and people I know that I'm at school anyways. So if I don't respond, then they know that for sure anyways. And if they just keep responding, I'll just yell at them. So.
So I guess it shares information with you about how important that relationship is to the other person you might be with. Because are they respecting the boundaries of school and of space and about your time and what's being used? I know that the only thing I worry about not having service is my kids can't reach me. I make sure the school's phone number is programmed into their phones if they need to contact me, because they can't reach me via cell phone. I told my kids to email me at school, on their phones if they need to reach me.
If
not,
it's an emergency,
right? It's not
shoot
a
me an
call
email.
grandpa because they can't reach me here, and so they know that. But I also know that most people, like you said, they know that I'm here. Nobody's gonna get upset with me if I don't respond back. But there's that anxiety that you're talking about though, with if it shows that I've read, it sends a read report or whatever, I know that they know that I read it. And there's anxiety over this immediacy of being able to communicate back to somebody. And again, I know that you are used to it, but what a heightened sense of having to be used to that. And does this idea of more stress, more anxiety, potentially more depression, does it make sense with new media? You think? It starts to break down some of what we have to work with?
I think it's also the expectation that you can send any text message or anything within a few seconds, and so they expect you to respond just as fast.
There's a greater expectation to.
Which is why I have y'all write letters in this class. They write 5 letters
Do they?
over the course, because slow it down.
Who do they write it to?
It's whoever they want. I don't read them.
don't get service and like this is my only class on B days and I have zero service in
I know, this is a dead zone.
And like I get more anxiety if I try to leave my phone in my car than I do like if it's with me. Like I know I'm not gonna get any I'm not gonna have any service, but like I can't leave it in my car.
That's a whole other type of anxiety, isn't it?
Yes.
A lot of us feel that way. Like when I was coming in here today, I left my notes. I had notes for this lesson in my car, and I came in and I was like, forget the notes. It's snowing out there. Like I don't need them. But if I had left my phone in there, I would have been like, be right back. I would have went and got my phone because I feel like I need it. I need my phone, right?
I've left it at home on the charger before and I literally miss class to go home and get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've driven home from work to go get my phone, and I work in Clearfield, and I live in West Haven, and I drove home from work got to work, got to get out of my car, and was like, man, I just got right back in and drove off. I went back. Luckily, my boss is pretty flexible about that stuff, but there is, you get a little anxiety about that. There's conversations happen every summer when people unfortunately leave children in cars. There's always that conversation. You would never leave your phone in the car, and that's true,
Isn't
right?
that crazy? Like there's people like you remember your phone. Like there's people out there who remember their phone more than their kids. You know, in the cars. It's really sad.
It's
and
just
really
a
scary.
crazy thing, right?
And they're just, I love it when they're just like, I'll read the articles that'll offer suggestions to like remember your kids in the car, and it'll say
Leave a shoe back
leave
there.
something important that you
Yeah.
need in the car, so you won't forget your kid in the car. You get it? Like the kid's
Leave-
not important.
Leave
like,
your
it's
phone.
level.
Leave your phone in the back seat.
It is sad.
If you leave your phone in the back seat, you'll go to the back seat to get your phone and remember your kids there. It's sad.
It is, but I mean, it's honestly the reality. It's
It is,
really
yep.
scary.
Generally, babies aren't quiet in cars unless they're asleep.
Oh man, mine are pure little angels.
Really?
Yeah, no, they're awesome car kids. I'm going to Montana tomorrow. Oh, they're gonna be great. They're great kids in the car. They've got like virtual reality now, so let's just sit in the car doing this.
Oh, that's awesome.
But then my daughter will show up because she gets virtual things.
Do you guys have any other questions or any other thoughts on the new media? No?
Well, thank
Okay,
you so
well,
much for coming in
hey,
and
thanks
telling us
for
about
having
new
me.
media today. Everybody, we applaud the reporters for this time.
I mean, these guys are the experts in new media,
Yeah,
right?
no, they know better more than I do, for sure.
They have grown up in it. This is your world. I'm just living in it, I guess.